For nearly a century, Superman's rare display of unwavering faith in humanity's compassion, conveyed through inspiring and imaginative stories, has captivated us all. However, somewhere along the way, we stopped believing in him, maybe because we stopped believing in ourselves. Slowly, we began to mirror the cynicism he fights against, glorifying moral compromise as a way to survive. Somehow, we came to believe that Superman's ideals were nothing more than wishful thinking from a nostalgic past. From global unrest to personal anxiety, our world feels more fractured than ever, ironically highlighting why we need Superman's hope. So, like many of you, I was extremely hopeful when it was announced that James Gunn would be reviving the franchise for his new film. From trailers to posters, this movie promised a triumphant return of Superman's appeal to our higher selves. But did this summer's blockbuster live up to its ambitious promises? Today, we'll try to answer that question. Before evaluating Gunn's vision, we must further understand the compassion that defines Superman. This compassion is defined by his ironclad refusal to kill, which, unlike other heroes, isn't informed by trauma, guilt, or duty. This refusal is simply self-evident kindness. Superman has the power to instantly neutralize any threat, and when he can't, he often faces challenges so monumental that he can justify any means to eliminate them. Yet, for him, the ends never justify the means. Now you may ask why. Well, the answer is simple. Because Superman believes in the best of everyone. He sees a limitless potential for good, even in the worst of us. This ambivalence is uncompromising, and it's what makes Superman so uniquely compelling amongst the media of our time. You see, modern media is increasingly obsessed with what it calls realism. It's relentless in portraying a constant play of binaries, which it mistakes for reality. Kill or be killed. Right or wrong. Do or die. Really, what this obsession boils down to is it's our direct reflection of our despair, as our media is often a reflection of ourselves. So blinded by the massive scale of challenges that we face today, we end up convincing ourselves that we have little to no agency when facing our dilemmas. We limit our creativity and justify compromises to our deepest convictions with the illusion of necessity. Superman, as a character, challenges us to think higher than the chains that we bind ourselves with. In other words, Superman is a symbol of our ability to imagine morally. Moral imagination is the ability to think beyond binaries that force us to compromise our morals or cost lives. As a concept, it finds voice in Superman's motto, "There's always a way." Superman reminds us that despite the massive challenges we face today, we can always defy fear. We can refuse to be defined by vengeance, and most of all, we can break free of the illusion of necessary evils with the simple act of compassion. In an age where warfare is increasingly vengeful, fearful polarization often becomes violence, and humanity uses necessity to justify heinous acts, the ideal that Superman represents is absolutely vital. And when Superman media itself is limited to realism, we reveal what we believe to be our own limits. So now that we've explored Superman as a character a bit and why he matters, let's look at James Gunn's version. The movie opens strongly, and its theme is perfectly clear. Superman's compassion is revolutionary because it's unconditional. The film earns our trust by pacing the movie's exposition around Superman's efforts to save a monster, a dog, and in my favorite scene, a squirrel caught in the crossfire. These scenes reflected why I personally love Superman, and I felt connected to the film in a way that all great media aspires to do for their audience. But sadly, the deeper we go, the more the theme gets lost. The first crack is small. A touching scene between Lois and Clark is interrupted by a vocal cameo of Peacemaker, who says, "Superman doesn't kill, unless absolutely necessary." The throwaway line seems insignificant at first, but its implications absolutely are not, as it reframes Superman's compassion as conditional. You see, I figured that since Peacemaker is hardly an expert on Superman, the dialogue could have been added by Gunn to reinforce how a vindictive world misunderstands the character of Superman. And this would make sense thematically, as it was established that Superman is a revolutionary character because of his unconditional compassion. So it was easy to write this one off. The next crack became apparent when the mysterious villain Ultraman was revealed to be a clone of Superman created by Lex Luthor. In the comics, clones and robots were often included to infuse action without moral consequence. And this always bothered me, as stories often neglect to reconcile displays of sentience in those characters with the callousness with which they're disposed of. The movie seems to have averted this trope so far, thankfully. Earlier, Superman grieves a dying AI companion who insists to him that he has no sentience. But this made it clear Superman values any life, even synthetic, with this display of compassion. So imagine my absolute surprise when, in the final battle, Gunn Superman does the unthinkable. He lets that same clone die. And no remorse, no regret, just a battle that ended in death. You see, wounded and desperate, Superman flips Ultraman into a bus headed for a black hole. What haunts me, however, is the silence that follows the scene. The utter lack of emotion is absolutely harrowing, as our hero doesn't even react to the death. Even if, as many fans speculate, the clone returns as Bizarro, the question remains, why didn't Superman try? Why didn't this character that was built to be this compassionate paragon mourn for the clone's death? Some people argue that the black hole wasn't truly lethal. It was more of a portal, like the Phantom Zone. Other people maintain that Superman himself would have survived the black hole, and he must have reasoned that his clone would as well. However, in both scenarios, the clone is condemned to an eternity of isolation. The clone is never given a chance to prove that it can be more than its conditioning. If Gunn Superman could show remorse for not being able to save a kaiju, I don't understand why he couldn't show remorse for his tortured double. The clone, after all, was stripped of its free will by Lex Luthor's conditioning, and that made it more tragic than malicious. Superman should have recognized that, and being the last son of Krypton means that he can empathize, and he can know what it feels like to be alienated, alone, weaponized, like the clone was. Ultimately, what breaks the film's thematic integrity is not just the act, but the levity surrounding its delivery. In previous scenes depicting death, there was always a dialogue, a look of frustration, something that would reinforce Superman's compassion, and thus the film's thematic core. Instead, what we get after this scene is a hard cut to a slapstick joke. This tonal whiplash betrays everything this film works so hard to establish. A Superman that cares. A Superman who may fail, but will always try. One who mourns synthetic life, sees the best in a monster, and protects even the smallest of innocents. What makes Superman special is that he never gives up on life, even when it's highly irrational. As the great Grant Morrison once said, "In humanity's darkest moment, we created a hero who would never let us down." But here, in a moment where it mattered the most, Superman lets us down. So ultimately, no, James Gunn's Superman does not live up to its promises. It hints at the optimism that makes the character so great, but in its climax, it betrays that same character and any semblance of it. The Ultraman scene reminds me of Zack Snyder's climax in Man of Steel, where Superman kills General Zod to save an innocent family. Both films show Superman being complicit in death, but how they set it up is pretty different. You see, Gunn's Superman is not a god. From the opening scene, he's bloodied and vulnerable. His memorable monologue reflects this. He says, "That's what they always get wrong about me. I love, I get scared, I wake up every morning, and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other and try to make the best choices I can. I screw up all the time, but that's being human, and that's my greatest strength. So it's obvious that this version of Superman is not defined by his omnipotence, but rather his integrity and perseverance. This version of Superman is not perfect. He's not someone who is a hero because he always succeeds, but that he tries. He tries to save everyone, and he genuinely feels bad when he can't. The best execution of this in the movie is the kaiju scene, where Superman consistently pleads for a non-lethal solution to the monster attacking Metropolis. But his peers in the Justice Gang disagree, and while he's distracted saving civilians, they kill the monster. And Superman is distraught. He hates this. It's much to his dismay. And while I think the scene is well enough executed, I would have liked to see more of this. I would have liked to see maybe a few extra seconds of Superman genuinely mourning the monster. I mean, the consistent flaw in this movie is it doesn't give its themes time to breathe. More, it suffocates them with action. And that's to the film's detriment. But regardless, this all sets up Superman in Gunn's film as not an all powerful god who wills morality into reality, but more of a compassionate yet limited man, like all of us, who tries his best but really can't be everywhere at once. The most important and relatable piece of Gunn's Superman is that he cares when he fails. He never takes it lightly when lives are at stake. In theory, the Ultraman scene can build on this. A wounded Superman succumbing to his injury and failing to save a life. A simple scene mourning this failure, even a glimmer of reaction, would deepen his humanity and reinforce the film's themes. But the execution sadly fails. Without a pause, the film shifts to comedy. And it feels like the film lacks Superman's fervor for life. The death of a sentient being is brushed off and insulted by a poor joke. This undermines the film and the character it uses as its theme. Why show Superman grieving for an AI, advocating for a monster, and even saving a squirrel, but not show him reacting to the death of his clone? It doesn't make sense to me. This disconnect can be attributed to the style of James Gunn. While I think he's a great director, his fast-paced storytelling prioritizes action, sometimes at the expense of emotional resolution. James Gunn's storytelling works amazing in films like Guardians of the Galaxy, where the timing of scenes reinforces the chaotic story of misfits trying to survive a cosmos out to get them. But here, the style betrays a moral gravity that Superman as an ideal and as a character in the story demands. In refusing to pause and let their hero mourn, the film cheapens the dedication to compassion it spends so long building as the thematic basis. Take a second and without judgment, compare this to Man of Steel. For all its flaws, the film gives its climax emotional weight. Henry Cavill's devotion brings to life how Superman must have felt. The look of pure shock and despair, the guilt welling up in his eyes, and the intentional cinematography go a long way to show that this Superman cares. Even for someone like Zod, this grounds the Superman in his compassion. Where Man of Steel lacks, however, is in its build-up to the climax. Throughout the film, Superman is likened to a god. The biblical imagery clarifies that Snyder wants us to see Kal-El as a god amongst men. While our limitless, compassionate, and amazing protagonist cries over the death of another, it fails to resonate with us. If he's truly that powerful and infallible, why couldn't he find another way? Again, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't add up, and it feels unearned. And later films in the Snyderverse don't really help this case, as Cavill's Superman has no qualms when his allies behead the villain Steppenwolf. This makes the wonderfully executed scene of Zod's death look hollow in context, because the cosmic scale of the setting overshadows the hero's journey. It's safe to say both films, in their own ways, skirt on the edge of greatness. Gunn builds a heroic moralist, but fails to address the costs of compromise. Snyder portrays the cost intensely, but fails to lay a thematic foundation. What we need is a Superman that unites Gunn's humility and compassion with Snyder's emotional resolution. What we get instead is a Superman that is both unrecognizable and, unfortunately, unrelatable. The only movie in recent memory that succeeds where both Man of Steel and Superman 2025 fail is Superman 1978. And the secret ingredient is simple. It's Clark Kent. Superman of 1978 respects that the alter ego is not a disguise, but actually Superman's true identity. You see, Superman is a character who's often caught in cosmic battles of grandiose scale, but the themes he represents are best portrayed in the mundane and everyday. It's deeply profound when we see the being that can shake heavens get nervous on his first date, or simply admire a sunset. I mean, this is the soul of Superman. And on the surface, the juxtaposition inherent in Superman being Clark Kent inspires us to appreciate what we have. Because even in the face of limitless possibilities, the here and now is what Superman as Clark Kent chooses. Thematically, however, Clark Kent is the core of Superman. It's because he chooses to live amongst us that he understands how hard it is to live and how beautiful it is that we as humans try anyway. You see, without Clark, Superman is just another Zeus, an otherworldly figure removed from human affairs, and his morality feels like a divine mandate, not an ideal to aspire towards. Superman 1978 understood this. Despite its flaws, Christopher Reeve and Richard Donner humanized their Superman in the well-meaning but bumbling reporter. It's because we see this Superman as a normal person who struggles opening bottles, who fumbles on first dates, and genuinely connects with the people around him, that we can believe when the man who defies gravity takes the time to help a cat from a tree or to make a little girl smile. It's because the film shows Clark in tandem with, not in the shadow of, Superman, that we can relate to his compassion for life and his admiration for human beings. As Clark, even the mundane moments exude moral imagination and compassion. In contrast, the recent movie features Clark for maybe a scene or two, and mostly in the shadow of his alter ego Superman. Man of Steel infamously omits Clark almost entirely, and it's quite a shame, since in the extended cut of Snyder's immediate sequel to the film, Batman vs Superman, it's Clark's humanity that grounds the deification of Superman. The refusal to show Clark Kent denies the audience a chance to connect with the man who is so super. Without Clark, it's almost inconceivable why Superman would find life beautiful, let alone try to preserve it unconditionally. It's precisely because he lives among us, because he struggles, because he fails, that Superman understands why compassion is important. Because suffering is something we all experience, whether you're an earthling or a clone of the most powerful man conceived. Both adaptations focus on the super more than the man, and in doing so, they alienate the humans watching him and dilute the potency of an otherwise very worthy message. So, in conclusion, while Superman 2025 is a beautiful film that at times dazzles the audience in the greatness of Superman, a subpar climax dulls its hard work. The movie's refusal to acknowledge the weight of Superman taking another life, or even condemning a person to a lifetime of solitude, lies in stark contrast to the man who tries to save everyone. What could have been an emotional payoff and tribute to the character instead becomes a crucial thematic misstep. However, I still think there's hope. If future installments of James Gunn's DC universe address this scene, if Superman is shown to reflect thoughtfully or even actively seek to right this wrong, Gunn's vision could evolve into the Superman we need and the Superman he sets up throughout the film. To get there, James Gunn must ground each choice his character makes in consequence, the lack of which led to his immediate predecessor's downfall. Unlike Zack Snyder's subsequent treatment of General Zod's death, the decision for Superman to let Ultraman fall into the black hole mustn't be forgotten. It must be reckoned with. But beyond a simple film critique, I want to say that in a polarized world, there's something that we can learn about loving something so deeply without ignoring its flaws. I love this movie, and its initial portrayal of the protagonist speaks to why I love Superman. But I strongly dislike the stylistic choices at the end, which, to me, undermine the Superman the movie builds. I fear for future films where my favorite hero chooses to kill without remorse. Similarly, while I'm not the biggest Man of Steel fan, and I definitely dislike the insistence on Superman as a godlike figure, I find myself feeling kinship with the weight of its climax. I really like how Henry Cavill's Superman actually cares. He's forced to make this choice, and whether he had to or not is debatable, but the portrayal is so deeply human. I can't help but find kinship with it. And maybe that's what makes fiction so beautiful. The heroes we love are reflections of ourselves. We love them because they represent the best of us. If James Gunn and Zack Snyder feel that their visions are personalizations of the ideal that is Superman, I respect it fully because it's an authentic reflection of them, and that's what Superman should be. All of this reveals a lesson that is deeper than cinema. Although our beliefs and their expressions are deeply personal, we must understand that their value is not universal. We value things on different scales. This goes beyond movies. It's relevant for politics and everyday conversation. This realization should unlock our true superpower, which is our ability to connect with one another, to understand each other's experiences, no matter how different they may be. My personal version of Superman is a paragon of compassion who would never kill someone or let them face death alone. My understanding of Superman reflects my personal commitment to the ideal of compassion, and your version may be different, and that's perfectly okay. That's the point. That highlights the need for our superpower, connection. So, to end this video, I'll leave you with this. What does your Superman look like? I want to know. Has any film or comic captured him in the way that you imagined? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to learn. As always, stay authentic, stay super, and I'll see you faster than a speeding bullet. This is Lotus Productions, signing off.